Hey, happy Friday. This week we'll talk about LG maybe abandoning smartphones for good. We'll talk about 3 exciting new chips from Qualcomm and MediaTek, and we'll also talk about yet another Huawei ban. This week we also have a special edition tech knowledge quiz where all 20 questions are about things that I've covered in my previous TechAltar videos. So if you think you know a lot about tech, or if you just think you watched all of my videos, go test yourself. Links are in the description, and welcome to the Friday checkout. Okay, my pick of the week will be rumors and reports about LG maybe leaving the smartphone market behind. There has been a lot of back and forth both confirming and denying the news this week, so here's all we know so far. LG has actually been on a bit of a roll since they got their new CEO about a year ago, with the Velvet doing better than previous models, the experimental Wing managing to capture good media attention, especially for an LG phone, the company announcing that it will be the first, or at least one of the first, to bring out an actual rollable phone to the market, and even financial losses shrinking somewhat last quarter, in large part as the company moved to outsource the manufacturing for many of its lower-end models. The CEO even claimed that they were planning to achieve profitability in 2021 after 23 straight quarters of losses. They weren't on a huge roll, but things were starting to pick up, so it came as a bit of a surprise when the Korean industry paper The Elec claimed in a now-deleted post that the leadership was considering to abandon the phone business. The Elec generally has an excellent track record, but then Ken Hong, head of global corporate communications at LG, quickly denied the report as, quote, definitely untrue, more speculation and rumors. And just a few days earlier, the company had just committed to bringing its rollable to the market. Still, after more leaks, LG later confirmed an internal memo that said, quote, the company is considering all possible measures, including sale, withdrawal, and downsizing of the smartphone business to deal with the fierce international pressure, despite stressing that no decision has been made, and Vietnamese conglomerate Ving Group, who makes phones amongst other things, and has previously acquired Spanish phone maker BQ a few years ago to get into the European market, has also reported to being interested in purchasing at least some parts of LG's mobile division, probably to get into the US market, although, again, without any clear details. And while all of that sounds very definitive, my feeling is that these rumors are kind of blowing things out of proportion a little. I mean, LG has already committed to outsourcing most of its boring phones to ODMs over a year ago to focus on experimental flagships, and I doubt that they would have literally just introduced and committed to making a rollable if they were planning to close down the next week or so. So I'm not sure the change here is going to be as drastic as people are making it out to be. I mean, it could be an internal memo that was about some more restructuring that would happen. But the problem is, once a rumor like this starts, it kind of turns itself into a self-fulfilling prophecy. If a company is rumored to abandon its phone business, it will struggle to convince people to buy their phones, it will struggle to make carriers and retailers sell their phones, and it will struggle to get really smart employees to choose to work for them. So in the end, they might just have to exit regardless. Anyway, investors seem to be excited about the prospects as the company's share price jumped a pretty insane 25% in just 2 days, meaning investors think LG is worth $5.5 billion more now that it is rumored to sell its phone business. Just for comparison, the company's phone business lost less than that in the last 5 years combined. So that's a pretty tough assessment. I would personally be pretty sad if LG actually completely abandoned its smartphone business. I really hope they don't, especially when I think they were starting to get back on track a little bit. But if I hear anything new about them, I'll actually tweet about it. So if you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, maybe follow me there. Okay, as for my win, we have 3 brand new, almost flagship smartphone chips this week. They're called the Snapdragon 870, the MediaTek Dimensity 1200, and the Dimensity 1100, and they all sit somewhere between the ultra high-end and the mid-range. So the Snapdragon 870 is basically last year's Snapdragon 865, just with slightly higher clock speeds, so it's more like a facelift than a truly next-gen processor. The Dimensity 1200 is essentially the equivalent of the almost flagship Exynos 1080, using the same CPU cores but a slightly different fabrication process, and the Dimensity 1100 is essentially just the same processor but without the single super highly clocked core. All of which is to say that all 3 of these processors kind of sit between this year's best of the best flagship processors and last year's best of the best flagship processors. And you might be wondering why both companies seem to be especially excited about this little almost flagship niche. And there are 2 answers to that. First, there is a growing category of budget flagships with phones like the Galaxy S20 FE in it, which offer almost everything from their $1,000 cousins but cost much less. This new category kind of deserves its own chip, and that's where the three newcomers fit in perfectly. And second, the proper flagship chips this year, like the Snapdragon 888 and the Exynos 2100, both seem to be struggling with heat issues, most likely due to their fancy new high-powered X1 core. The X1 is the new fancy single core from ARM that is really fast, but is bigger, is more expensive, and runs hotter. I've actually linked to a video about it thermal throttling down in the description. Which means there's actually room for new chips that don't have this X1 core. Alright, and my fail of the week will be yet another Huawei ban that the Trump administration managed to push out basically on their last day in office. And I have to say, I will not miss having to talk about yet another ban what feels like every week for the next couple of years. Anyway, the report from Reuters specifically says that the Commerce Department, quote, intends to deny a significant number of license requests for exports to Huawei and a revocation of at least one previously issued license. Intel, as well as Japanese memory chip maker Kioxia, if that's how you pronounce them, a successor to Toshiba's Memory Corp, are companies that will likely have their already existing licenses revoked, according to the report, and there are at least 150 more that have been waiting for licenses for months and will likely be denied now. And as a reminder, just on Intel alone, this is like the 5th time the US changes its mind. First, they were banned from supplying Huawei under the original entity list, like everyone else. Then they were allowed. Then the US announced its mega ban on the 15th of September, covering almost every chip company. Then the US said, you know what, anything that isn't 5G related, including Intel chips for Huawei's laptops, for example, was not an actual security concern, so it gave out licenses to companies like Intel again, and now they are revoking those again. So, well done on consistency. Now, we don't quite know what Biden will do about the Huawei ban yet. I mean, I would be surprised if he actually completely lifted it, but I just hope he will stop flip-flopping around so I don't have to make 12 more videos about it and pull all my hair out in the next 4 years. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. As always, check out the weekly tech knowledge quiz, especially if you are a long-time TechAltar viewer. Getting at least 15 questions right will get you an invite code to create an account in my gadget review app Crowd. Everything is linked down in the description, and I'll see you next week.